If you want to be a drug addict, or if in actual fact you do not want to be a drug addict, chances are that you are already a legalized drug addict. We are a drug world and it's no fault of yours. Can we talk? This is going to be in narration. 111 years ago, 1990 to be precise, we were all unwillingly introduced into a legal drug lifestyle. Toxic chemical laboratories were converted into big pharma drug factories, and suddenly we all became drugged without us realizing it. Please allow me take you through the dark world of the world's largest legal drug trade. In the year 1905, one man was given a huge contract by two of the world's richest men, one being John Rockefeller, then worth about 1.5% of the entire US's GDP. Today, that will be around $400 billion. And the second man being Andrew Carnegie, he will be worth $300 billion in today's equivalent. Rockefeller is considered to be the single wealthiest person in the US history. Today, the richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, is worth $177 billion, just to give us some perspective. So, what happened in 1905 was that Henry Pritchett, the first president of the Carnegie Foundation and also a staunch advocate of medical school reforms, appointed and sent a man by name Abraham Flexner. Mark that name, Abraham Flexner. He appointed Abraham to travel around North America to report on the status of medical education on colleges and hospitals around the country. Abraham Flexner was not a physician, he was not a scientist, not a medical educator, but held a Bachelor of Arts degree and operated a for profit school. He went all around and visited all the 155 North American medical schools in operation then. He went on stagecoach, on trains, and horsebacks. This was before the interstate highway system was in place. He then came up with an inventory of all the medical schools that prescribed drugs. It took Flexner 5 years to do this. Now, around this time, Rockefeller had used his oil money to buy out part of the massive German pharma cartel, IG Farben. That happened to be the very same cartel that would later assist Hitler to implement his eugenics-based vision of a new world order founded on racial supremacy, and the simple strategy was to do this by manufacturing chemicals and poisons for war. They owned chemical manufacturing and drug companies, so with the additional control of IG Farben and with drug manufacturing under his wings, Rockefeller then embarked on a wicked plan, wicked from the point of view of no longer having a free and healthy humanity, but I must say, brilliant from a business perspective. By 1910, Flexner presented a landmark report on medical education in North America, compiling a list and analyzing most especially the educational programs of the 155 medical schools throughout Canada and the United States. What the Carnegies and the Rockefellers did after this report was presented was what I call a fait accompli, a master stroke, a military style medical coup. The Flexner report gave birth to what today we call modern science. Flexner, using the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine as the ideal, issued recommendations reporting that there were too many medical schools, too many doctors being trained, that entry requirements needed to be increased, and that physicians needed to practice in a scientific manner and get more involved in funded research. He reported that medical schools should control clinical instructions in hospitals and that all natural healing modalities being practiced were unscientific quackery. The report called for medical education to be standardized and for there to be male only admission programs to accommodate a smaller and a hand picked admission pool, and definitely not from minority origins. Rockefeller saw his competition as holistic medicine, as naturopaths, as homeopaths, as eclectic medicine, such as traditional Chinese medicine, and many more. So they were all mocked and demonized, and doctors practicing such were even jailed. Rockefeller eliminated and got rid of any competition to Western medicine, aggressively proposing drugs and radiation as treatments, thus enriching himself as he now owned the means to produce westernized treatments unchallenged. All forms of traditional and non-allopathic medicine were successfully removed from schools. He secured his monopoly by launching a targeted smear campaign against his competitors. Homeopathy and natural medicines were discredited and demonized through the newspapers and other media. Many schools fell short of the standard advocated, and such schools were merged or were outright closed. After the Flexner report, there was no more level playing field for independent medical practice. Abraham Flexner then submitted the report to the American Congress in 1910. But before he did that, Rockefeller used his control of the media to generate public outcry at the findings of the report, ultimately leading Congress to declare the American Medical Association as the only body with the right to grant medical school licenses. This suited Rockefeller perfectly. He then used the AMA to compel the government to destroy natural therapy competition, which it did successfully through regulating medical schools. Sadly, the American Congress acted upon the conclusions and made them law. Allopathy became the standard mainstream modality, even though its three main methods of treatment since the 1800s had been bloodletting, had been surgery, and the injection of toxic heavy metals like lead and mercury to supposedly displace disease. Madness. To help with the transition and change the minds of other doctors and scientists, a philanthropic group called General Education Board, the GEB, was founded, and the Rockefellers and the Carnegies used their tax exempt foundations to offer huge grants of more than $100 million of free money to the best medical schools, to the best colleges, and to the best hospitals that were practicing and prescribing drugs, on the condition that only allopathic based curriculums be taught, and also on the condition that some of their agents be allowed to sit on the board of directors. Madness again. This is the typical classic carrot and stick approach. They called this efficient philanthropy, which basically means they wanted a return on their investment. They systematically dismantled the curricula of these schools by removing any mention of the natural healing power of herbs and plants, or of the importance of diet to health. The result is a system which to this day churns out doctors who are utterly clueless about nutrition and disregard the idea that what you eat can actually heal or hurt you. In a very short time, medical colleges were streamlined and homogenized. All the students were learning the same thing, and medicine was all about using patented drugs. Scientists received huge grants to study how plants cured diseases, but their goal was to first identify which chemicals in the plant were effective, and then to recreate a similar chemical in the lab that could be patented. Madness. A pill for an illness became the mantra for modern medicine. That was the beginning of the end. After this, the AMA ensured that the medical doctors started a juggernaut that's taking up most people globally. So, what you see here were patients who trusted the medical system and they all died of the same disease that John D. Rockefeller eventually died of, a heart disease. The only difference with Rockefeller and Prince Philip was that Rockefeller lived to 97 years of age, and Prince Philip, who had an over 2 decades pre-existing heart condition, lived to 99 years of age. None of the others here, and that is from Elvis Presley to Michael Clark Duncan, lived beyond 57 years of age. They all died so young of a heart disease, and that is what we are seeing these days. Interestingly, I must add, John D. Rockefeller and Prince Philip reportedly used homeopathy for themselves and their families. Most people have been socialized to think that the predominant medicine is MD directed pharmaceutical medicine. We think that those guys are top dog because their therapeutics are better than the homeopaths or the naturopaths or the chiropractors or the herbalists or traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda. That is not the case. They are top dog because their therapeutics are better. That has to be a joke. That is laughable. Allopathic medicine, let me put it bluntly, good natured medical doctors are today in the driver's seat because of political and financial coalitions that were built at the turn of the century. After the Flexner report, the AMA only endorsed schools with a chemical drug based curriculum. It didn't take long before non allopathic schools fell by the wayside due to lack of funding. Madness. Rockefeller now had his monopoly on drugs, and Big Pharma and Rockefeller medicine were born and has only grown bigger and more terrible since, even going as far as routinely bribing doctors and practitioners to prescribe their toxic and side effect laden pills. Rockefeller, the AMA, and Big Pharma are now all key parts of the NWO, the New World Order, but it all started with the Flexner report. Today, Rockefeller's corporations own almost 50% of all medical businesses around the world. So, why am I so taken in by this, you may ask? This is a gigantic problem, and I mean it's crazy. I'll tell you why. MD directed therapeutics is the third leading cause of death globally. They are so smart. I mean, they have so integrated and monopolized the system that they came up with a huge money making scheme called medical insurance. When you buy medical insurance, what you're actually doing is you're betting that you're going to get so sick you will not be able to afford it, and so you pay good money every month to gain access to a system of medicine that's the third leading cause of death in the world. This is simply madness. We surely need a rethink and to change on this, and it can only come from the grassroots, from the communities. Let me put it this way: if one country or even globally 700,000 people died each and every year from, say, for instance, driverless car system defaults or airline crashes, a worldwide investigation will be carried out and pilots will go to jail. Airlines will be shut down. Car manufacturers will be jailed. I guarantee you. Look, a handful of terrorists fly 2 planes into the Twin Towers. About 3,500 people die, and then America went to war. They came up with the WMD conspiracy in Iraq. They plundered and looted the country and made Iraqis pay for the damages that they caused. Yet 700,000 die each year. No, I shouldn't say die. 60,000 are killed every month by medical doctor treatment, and we don't bat an eyelash on eyelid. This is because we've been, for the last 100 years, kind of led into this false belief. We have been sold alternative truths. My question is, are we going to just sit back and become a casualty statistics? Do you see this? Do we see this as normal? Well, I don't see it as normal. And I believe in one thing, that it is the truth that will set us free. My good book says so. Now we have a better insight into the history of the evolution of medicine, of allopathic medicine as practiced globally. It was a relatively level playing field between the naturopaths, the chiropractors, the osteopaths, the homeopaths, and the medical doctors until the Rockefellers and Carnegies messed things up. It was King who spoke those words, and they ring so true today. Allopathy, that is treatment by toxic chemicals, is the only form of medicine where MD directed treatments kill and no one gets jailed. What I mean is, you go to a medical doctor, you go to an MD, he gives you a treatment, and you die from it. Now, according to the United States Department of Health and Human Services, 15,000 Medicare patients a month are killed by MD treatment. You pay and you still die. This is just for the US. We're going to publish results for Africa when they become available, if they do become available. A recent study from Johns Hopkins states that medical errors are now the third leading cause of death in the US, and that will be true globally, having surpassed strokes, Alzheimer's, and diabetes. This is madness. So, guys, this brings to my first close my little attempt in highlighting a system of life that causes untold death, causes pain and bankruptcy to those who trust in the system. I'm going to list out a few of the most common types of medical errors that were designed by those two men that we are now experiencing in our current medical system. And we think these are normal. And guess what? A third player is in the picture, also a loved philanthropist. He has stepped up and taken the baton to build on what the Rockefellers and Carnegies put in place. I'm going to show you 3 or 13 errors that can be avoided when we change our therapies. These are diagnosis error, medication errors, death from side effects, inadequate monitoring after a procedure, inadequate follow-up after treatment, errors relating to anesthesia, failure to take proper precautions, avoidable delay in treatment, missed or delayed diagnosis, hospital-acquired infections, technical medical errors, failure to act on test results, and finally, and not the least, what I call the nocebo effect. The nocebo is used effectively by the medical system, typically kicking in when the practitioner or the MD or the specialist has exhausted all therapies available and you are told to await your death. What we hear a lot about is the placebo effect. The opposite is so true. The nocebo effect. This is where a medical practitioner gives you a prognosis. It gives you or she gives you an injunction that ends in your death. Let me be a bit more pragmatic, or let me do a bit more justice to this podcast by mentioning that J.D. Rockefeller ascended or descended from hard-working German immigrants. His father, William Rockefeller, was a traveling snake oil salesman. Big Bill as he was called, excelled as a quack doctor, a pitch man, a cunning artist, conning the sick, who he made desperate into buying his expensive remedies that were either useless or downright dangerous. He will be gone for months from his family and come back with a great roll of money. He will go to small towns, put up handbills advertising himself as the celebrated Dr. Livingston. That was a con. He advertised to cure anything, everything, but made a specialty of cancer and kidney troubles. John's dad, William Avery Rockefeller, his example provided ample life lessons to his sons about the business values of duplicity, of deceit, and a blatant disregard for public health. As I close, my name is George Mashiko. I am no medical practitioner. I never trained in medicine. I am just a 17 to 20 pops a day drug recovery, delivered successfully from the clutches of big pharma. So this is where we are now. I am doing this because I have a social agenda. Why do I have a social agenda? I have a bigger and larger than life social agenda because people are suffering needlessly and dying way too early from toxic chemical, big pharma, expensive treatments. Once you start them, it rarely ends well. You wouldn't believe, as God is my witness, pardon me, the things that people are recovering from in holistic medicine. I am a testament to that. I recovered from 3 chronic diseases, one terminally fatal, and it was all done naturally. So, by grace, I have developed a system called the Senses 9 Pill Toolbox Kit. In order to reverse my ill health and restore my health, I met with destiny. I cannot talk about Senses Toolbox Kit without first briefly mentioning Chinese entrepreneur Mr. Zhu Zui. Mr. Zhu Zui's deep philosophy gave me the confidence to build Senses. Now I am a diplomat, an ambassador of Senses. I'm obsessed with the tool, and today we are using one powerful pill to expose this dark secret. I developed Senses because pharmacology had failed me. I was getting worse health wise. I needed a drastic change in order to effectively hack my body back to optimal health. Then came the 9 pills. In this podcast, and in order for us to achieve optimal health, we are using the education and empowerment pill in taking us through the horror story of how they created deadly drugs. We are educating ourselves. It is a fact that the Rockefeller medical field strategy was to find ways to capitalize further his own empire, and he intelligently came across the idea of using coal tar. Coal tar is a petroleum derivative to make medicine. He used coal tar to make substances that affect the human mind, the human body, and the nervous system. In fact, coal tar derivatives are still used in cosmetics and pharmaceuticals today. Let me give an example that you can identify with easily. The starting material for the chemical synthesis of aspirin is benzene. Benzene is derived from petroleum. Yes, aspirin is made from benzene. Any wonder why heart diseases, brain tumors, and the rest are on the increase? So the system from the coal tar days has now evolved, and while chemical products are now accepted as medicinal drugs, they are excellent at masking or stopping symptoms, but overall do not cure or treat the underlying cause of a disease. Western medicine relies on big pharma's petroleum drugs, which unfortunately the body was never built to and can never ultimately assimilate. Big pharma engages in biopiracy to steal nature's best compounds and to patent them. The body's ability to fix itself is remarkable, and most of the time, all that the body needs to do its work is the raw materials, and for us to stop eating food, drinking water, and doing things that are hurting the body. Let me put it this way to illustrate the smart thinking of Big Pharma. If you put diesel fuel in an unleaded engine, even if it's a brand new Ferrari, it's going to run like crap if it runs at all. We agree, right? There is nothing wrong with the car. It just had the wrong fuel put in it. It will burn, it will crash. It's only a matter of time. It's the same principle with the human body. When you give the human body all the raw materials that it needs to clean up and maintain itself, Superman is what you get. Superwoman is what you also get. And even if you don't get the super status, you get benefits such as not needing blood pressure pills. Your arthritis, your tumors go away. At least you will not need chemotherapy, surgery, or radiotherapy. Your cancer goes away. Your hypothyroidism goes away. At least you will not need depression, anxiety, or panic attack pills. Just by giving the body the raw materials it needs, and just by cutting away toxic pills or using a tool like synthesis, you give yourself a fighting chance to heal. As I close, we are in a season of hope, and I would like to leave you with the profound words of an international and highly respected speaker, an old friend of mine, Pastor Poju Oyemade. I call him a seasoned transformational speaker. He put it so well. We have been in the dark for too long, deceived and conned for too long. The dream of optimal health and recovery from terminal and chronic diseases or even everyday illnesses shall be experienced when we understand the root causes and when we stay away from toxic health options. That is what I'm putting across to buttress what Pastor Poju Oyemade subscribes to. Thank you, Pastor Poju, for your inspiration. Well, that's it for me today. Today is a special day for me. It is the 10th of June 2021. It's my birthday. And what also will have been Prince Philip's 100th birthday. And it will be criminal of me to close without stating this. I cannot end without warning us of the next pandemic, one worse than the current COVID-19. Please make a note of this. The next pandemic should graze our globe between 2023 and 2025. Look out for that podcast. We are building foundation, and I hope this video gave you more clarity on how chemical toxic drugs and MDs became the mainstay in our world. We are laying a foundation and building our library, and we have scheduled this foundation as a 5-year project in itself. We'll be having at least 5 million viewers and listeners and at least 555,000 organic tribe and community members by 2026. I hope this was helpful. If you found it helpful, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, share this podcast, comment, and please do set on the notification button so you will get the podcast as I drop them. Please do check in the description panel below for other podcasts, particularly the podcast titled The Evil Horror of How Heart Diseases Were Created. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and have a healthy and wealthy day. And of course, have a disease-free day. God bless. Love you all.